Alright everyone, we start off today talking about based Finland. Well, mostly based. This move is definitely based. Link in the description, archived of course. By the way, thank you to Webster's Wares again for the Trump flag. It's been ironed so, people won't bitch about me and bitch at me about the creases in it or anything like that. It doesn't look like one of those Fed flags. You know when Patriot Front shows up or something, they always have like Nazi flags and stuff, but clearly they were just ordered off of Amazon. Never any of them that appear used or anything like that. They're all brand new. I find this mysterious anyway. Finland is actively encouraging more militia behavior in its country, of course. You share a land border with Russia. You've got a long tradition of civilians taking up arms against people from other countries that are attempting to fuck with you. The Winter's War, it wasn't all professional soldiers, dude. A lot of those people just knew how to shoot really well because they had spent their entire life in an area infested with bears and shit like that. There are hundreds of shooting ranges in Finland. They've decided to build hundreds more of them. The government is building shooting ranges and permitting them and so forth. This is the right thing to do. And I've pointed this out in the context of other countries. Like, I like how all the Western leaders are like, well, Russia's a big threat. Maybe they'll invade NATO. Maybe there'll be World War III. But meanwhile, the U.S. government is trying to disarm the militia. Is trying to prevent us from having the kind of weapons commensurate with being able to defend ourselves. Later on, I'll be requisitioning that AR-15. That's going to be one hell of a shout-out when it comes, by the way. That's the kind of weapon that you want. Not just handguns or old school like bolt actions and revolvers. Modern weapons as well, like functional ones that you would use potentially in a scenario where you have to defend your nation or defend yourself. If a bear wanders out of the woods, yeah, daddy's, 22 might be fun. I like the 22 revolver that my grandfather gave me, but if a bear lumbers out of the woods, I'm not going to bother firing at it with that. It's just going to piss it off. If anything, it's more likely to charge or something like that and fire a warning shot, but it's probably not loud enough to drive the bear off. You need something a little bit more beefy than that. Finland is going down the right path, and it's one that I've also suggested every other nation should be encouraged to take. Encourage your civilians to have arms, to know how to use them, and beyond that, also medical training, communications training, things like that, survival skills should all be in vogue. We've sort of gotten away from that mainly in the United States, at least in parts of the U.S. In rural America, it's still a thing. People should be reading the Book of Woodcraft and Foxfire and things like that. They should know how to build a snare. They should know how to fire a gun. They should know how to use a bow and even create them. It's actually not as hard as you'd think. The more sophisticated modern ones, maybe you need modern manufacturing, but something that'll net you a small to medium-sized game isn't actually that hard to rig up. Attempted to do it as a kid. Didn't work so well, but I was like fucking 10 at the time, so fucking sue me. Finland is encouraging its civilians to remain competent in the use of force in case of invasion and shit like that. Taiwan should be doing this. Guyana should be doing this. The ECOWAS nations, Nigeria and so forth, they should be doing this. Arm your citizens. At some point, it becomes almost like a microcosmic mutually assured destruction. Mutually assured destruction, of course, generally is referred to in a nuclear scenario. So two nations have enough nukes to effectively wipe one another and their whole spheres out. And so neither of them dares to actually use those weapons because it means mass catastrophe. If you've got a civilian population that's armed to the teeth, it's unlikely you're going to get invaded because a standing military will say, well, we ran the calculations and simulations and stuff. We decided we'd lose half of our military attempting to occupy just one of their provinces. We're incapable of doing it. We'll lose so much manpower, we'll no longer have enough left to actually lock down the territory we wish to take. Will be humiliated effectively. Like, there's a reason nobody fucks with the Swiss. Because all the Swiss have military training. They have armories. They have weapons at home. They're a heavily armed nation. Yes, it's a regulated form of armament, which I don't necessarily agree with. And the same is true to an extent for Finland and other nations that have a lot of guns, other than the United States and a few others. But it's better. It's better. These people will have a gun at home. They'll be able to defend themselves. In the survival situation, let's say shit hits the fan. You're not even being invaded. It's just world order has broken down to some degree. You're going to have to learn how to hunt pretty quick. Well, if your population already knows, and by the way, let's say you go to war, you mobilize against an enemy state. If your population is already used to firing guns, they've got a huge training advantage over some country where everyone's disarmed until they're handed a rifle by their government when they get conscripted now, aren't they? The U.S. had this advantage in World War II, and the Civil War, by the way. A lot of the people who signed up, they were already familiar with the kind of weapons that were being used. They had them at home. And so it didn't take very much effort to train them in, here's how you maintenance the weapon, here's weapon safety, you know, hold your finger on the trigger when you're not intending to fire, and basic, simple things that some people may not get. But if you got some country boy who's used to shooting at some food out there, out in them cornfields, well, it's not going to take much effort to train him. He's probably already as good as the average recruit. He's probably at least that good as someone who's been fully trained. Yeah, some people can't hit the broadside of a barn, and some people can blow the barn up piece by piece at 200 yards. Finland is doing the right thing. We should be doing this in the United States too. It's actually something I'd like to see Trump bring up as a strategy. Hey, we're on a war footing in the world, things are breaking down, people need to buy weapons and be competently trained in them. What I think is the government should subsidize the training. We should be doing what the Finns are doing and building more firing ranges, set aside land so that people can get used to their firearms, because not everyone has land. You're in the suburbs. You probably don't have a place to really train on your weapon, so you might be deficient, unregulated, as you might say as a member of the militia. Finland's got more wide open spaces, but, you know, if you were in some of the larger cities, you have to go a few miles to get to anywhere that's more rural, where you can actually use your weapon, again, unless you're defending yourself or something like that. There are indoor training ranges and outdoor training ranges that people should be utilizing. If you don't know how to fire your weapon and you don't have a place to train on it, I suggest that you go to a range. Here it's not a problem. Here there's 2.5 acres of land, there's plenty of room. There are objects that I can use to stop bullets for training, especially plinking with the .22, that's just fun. And it's not a problem. Not everyone is so lucky as to live in a semi-rural area. And so this is a good idea. What you'll end up with is a better trained, better armed Finn population, which means that anyone attempting to fuck with your people is more likely to either not bother trying, or if they try, they're more likely to fail. They're more likely not to be able to hold the land at all, because you've got a huge militia. Finland, not the most densely populated country in the world, but again, if you look at their history and combat, they've done fairly well, and I think the average Finnish person is lawful enough to be trusted with a weapon. I know that liberals in the United States don't agree with me. They think that you should only be able to have a BB gun or something like that. It astonishes me that people don't see through the bullshit, by the way. When your government is trying to prevent you from having use of force and have it adequately, what they're saying is that they trust you less than they trust foreign adversaries. Well, Finland apparently is beginning to deviate from that basic concept, along with the Swiss, certain U.S. states, it's kind of a patchwork here, a few of the provinces in Canada, it's more federalized, and a few Asian states. I would start, the United States should use, instead of sending money off into proxy wars, we should use that money to lobby other countries to adopt exactly that sort of strategy and expand the civilian militia. We should be doing that in Taiwan right now. Don't send them weapon shipments. Send them a bunch of AR-15s made straight in the USA. We can put logos on them and everything. Trick them out. Pour them in. Millions of them. China ain't gonna fuck with you. Yeah, they're gonna invade an island where there's 2 million rifles, 3 million rifles pointed in their direction. They'd be crazy to try. Well, then you don't have to worry about war as much now, do you? All you have to do is make sure there's a stable supply of ammunition and other goods. And of course, if somebody is a conscientious objector, they don't want to be in the militia, they don't want to do ROTC, all of this stuff, take medical training or something like that. Survive Boy Scout style stuff. At least you're still more survivable. If you know how to build a fire and catch a pheasant or something like that, you might not starve to death. That's about all. Peace out.